example of a country that went into hyperinflation. One of the things you said that I thought was interesting is that they were still able to run an economy because they had a black market. Talk about that, but it's what they were doing commercially that enabled them to continue even during that horrible time.
Well, they probably had the worst hyperinflation anyone has ever seen. If you took an original $2 bill and made a stack of $2 bills, if they had such a thing in the last iteration of the currency, the stack of the new currency to equal $2 of the old would literally stretch from the Earth to the Andromeda Galaxy, light years high. Not enough trees on Earth to print the money. Yet this is over a period of a couple of years, and the economy continued to function. People were employed. The reason it was that they had a backup to their system in a black market in the U.S. dollar. Somebody get us. We paid in Zimbabwe dollars, you quickly go and convert it into dollars and stabilize it effectively. There had a hedge against loss of purchasing power, which in that type of an environment is sort of like what you had in the Weimar Republic in Germany. You could go into a fine restaurant one night, have a old story from what happened. You have a very expensive bottle of wine with dinner, and the next morning the empty bottle of wine was worth more a scrap glass than it had been the night before, filled with the expensive wine. And that's how quickly things change. We don't have a backup system in the U.S., and as such, this could be extremely difficult, extremely disruptive to our system when it hits. And it's without a backup. I mean, gold is, for example, is a backup, but few people own gold.
Is silver a backup too?
Silver's a backup. Some of the stronger currencies mentioned earlier are backups. But the Ron Paul has introduced legislation to have gold treated as a currency along with the Federal Reserve notes, and that you can exchange the Federal Reserve notes for gold at the market rate.
Do you think that they will allow him to get that passed?
No. But his thinking is good in that if something like that were in place for a little while before hyperinflation hit, then we'd have a backup system and the effect on the economy would not be quite as dire. But without the backup system, you're going to see disruptions to the food supply chain, grocery store shelves get empty. That's the type of thing that leads to civil unrest. And
I watched a conversation that James Turk and Edwin Vieira talking about many, many different things, but one of the things that Edwin was talking about was that there needs to be legal facilitation on a state-by-state level so that there is a backup system in place on a state-by-state level. Do you think that that's doable?
Yeah, well, it's it's been moving through in some states, but it's different circumstance in each state. Some that just make legal the face value on the coin, which is useless. You need to be able to exchange the Federal Reserve notes for the gold content, not you have a 1 ounce coin that's marked $50, and that's worth $1,700 in gold. You're not going to spend it as $50, and that's why something what Ron Paul is pushing makes sense. You really need it on a national level, but irrespective of that, people who own some physical gold effectively have their backup. It's just that the rest of the world doesn't largely, and again, I'm talking rest of the world in the U.S., and you don't have a system set up which allows a smooth functioning in really difficult times. So for someone looking to protect himself in this environment, number one, I think you've got to you have to look at preserving your safety and your wealth. In terms of the wealth, you can hedge the purchasing power of what you have in the way of current dollar assets with gold, silver, Australian dollar, Canadian dollar, Swiss franc, hard assets. And I'm talking physical possession of the gold and silver. If things indeed get as bad as I believe they're going to, and the normal economic system or the normal flow of commerce breaks down, it's probably a very good idea to have a good store of commodities that you'd normally consume, as you would plan for a natural disaster. I mean, I'm sitting on top of the Hayward Fault, which is not a good place to be in an earthquake. Yet I would have a store of goods, canned goods and basic necessities to get me through a period of time in the event of a major earthquake, because it takes the government a long time to respond. What we're faced with here is a potential of a man-made disaster, where you could be seeing several months before you even get a normally functioning barter system. And once it breaks, I mean, there are any number of ways this thing can go. But having not only goods for your immediate consumption and needs for a couple of months, but also having some items for barter. I met a fellow at one time who had been in South American hyperinflation, and he said that the perfect small change he'd found was an airline-sized bottle of a high-quality scotch. The point is that whatever you get, get things that you might be able to consume yourself. Is, in the event I am wrong, you consume it, you breathe a sigh of relief. It's not costly to do that stuff, but it's good basic common sense.
The IMF wanted to make their SDRs the kind of world currency. And I know that there are many different agencies and organizations and governments talking about there being a kind of a shift toward a one world currency. Not to complicate anything, but if in fact this is the intent of the powers that be, both in and outside of the United States, I can see how a hyperinflationary conditions would serve to be able to transition into something like that. I think it would be horrifying and horrible, but I can see, depending upon the game plan of those that run things, how that could happen.
I don't think that'll happen.
Tell us why. That makes me feel good.
Well, look what's happening to the euro. When you work, I mean, the people, and I know there are people who'd like to see a one world currency, one world government. When you do that, you want to have the countries involved in healthy shape. I mean, if the euro were based on Germany and Holland and Finland and such, and didn't have Italy and Portugal in there, it'd be a fine, solid currency. But when they put it together, whoever thought that the Germans and the Italians could coordinate fiscal policy didn't know the Germans or the Italians, and as a result, I think the euro is doomed for failure. There was some people talking about the Amero, a currency union between Canada, U.S., and Mexico. With the way we're going, I don't think either Canada or Mexico would want to have their currency dependent on ours. You want the parties involved to be in good shape to have a happy circumstance. Otherwise, it disintegrates, as we're saying with the euro. The euro is not going to last.
I may not be saying this correctly, but do you agree that the Chinese are holding a lot of our real estate here? Do you think that the Chinese moves on our dollar could send us into an accelerated hyperinflation event?
Well, I would expect that what will trigger the hyperinflation here will be some substantial movement out of the dollar by a number of current holders, which could include the Chinese. The Chinese already made a lot of moves in that direction and certainly have been squawking about it. They also have significant political leverage with it, which they could use in all sorts of ways.
Do you think the Chinese currency could be the world reserve currency, possibly?
It may be eventually. It's not there yet. I mean, where we go down the road remains to be seen, right? I mean, they're still, to a large extent, tied to the U.S. dollar, and as long as they are, they'll suffer some of our inflation. Oil prices go up in dollar terms; they suffer that as long as they're effectively tied to us. I mean, they've been loosening it some, but I would expect you'd see that break free, and then it'll be a matter of who's picking up the pieces as the